Hey, Katie. We have the clue of the tapping heels. We're on chapter 10, Precarious Climb. At George's announcement, Nancy and Bess caught their breath. They were sure George was right and decided to look at the Persian cats. I found out, she went on, that the man had 10, but he sold 5. Nancy, said Bess, you go with George. I'll stay here with our cats. The other two hurried off, but as they neared booth 30, Nancy held George back. Don't you think it'd be better if we pretend to be strolling casually and stop to look at the cats? I suppose you're right, George agreed. The girls slowed to a leisurely pace. As they passed the booth, Nancy was sure the cats were Miss Carter's stolen Persians. They looked exactly the same as the one the girls were selling. Nancy studied the man who was in charge. He was short and rather stocky. Was he the one who had worn the spiked golf shoes? George spoke to the man. You have some beautiful cats here. I saw them a few minutes ago and went to get my friend. She's crazy about Persians. Yes, I am, said Nancy. She asked the price. When he named it, she said, Why, that's cheap for such fine animals. They're pedigreed, of course. So, if an animal's pedigreed, it generally means they're, purebred and they have, papers to show that they're purebred and, good quality genetically, basically. Oh, sure, the man replied. Do you have the pedigree papers with you? Nancy asked. The man hesitated for a few seconds, then said, They're here someplace. You buy one of the cats and leave your name and address. I'll send the pedigree later. Nancy smiled at him. But I want to see the pedigree before I buy. The man's attitude changed. If you don't want to buy on my say-so, don't, he said. Next customer? He turned away from the girls, ignoring them completely. They walked off. Nancy, what do you think? George asked. I strongly suspect he's a phony. It wouldn't hurt to call the police. If the man has nothing to hide, he won't be in trouble. But if he's the thief... Nancy stopped at a nearby phone booth and put in the call. The sergeant on duty said that 2 men would be sent to the cat show at once. He instructed Nancy to wait for them at the Carter booth so she could go with the officers to point out the suspect. I wonder if Bess sold any cats, said George as the girls went on. As they neared booth 10, they saw only 4 cats. Bess greeted them with a giggle. Want to know who the real salesman is around here? She asked, thumping her chest. Congratulations, said Nancy. Then she told Bess about the man in booth 30 and said the police would be arriving in a few minutes to talk to him. Bess gave Nancy a long look and shook her head. Everywhere you go, there's excitement. Nancy laughed. This may not end up being exciting at all. Here come 2 men now. I wonder if they're plainclothesmen from the police department or potential customers. The men stopped at the booth. Miss Drew? One of them asked. When Nancy acknowledged her identity, the 2 men opened their coats and showed police detective badges. They requested her to point out the suspect to them. Bess asked to go along. George, see if you can sell a cat while I'm gone, she teased. Nancy led the way toward booth 30. As they approached it, she gasped. The man and all the cats were gone. He isn't here, she exclaimed, embarrassed. The group stood in front of the empty booth, mystified. Nancy was sure that the detectives felt that a hoax had been pulled on them. Are you sure this is the right place? One of them asked Nancy. Oh, yes. Now listen, young lady, the other officer said. Don't you know it's a serious offense to bring out police on a wild goose chase like this? Bess was aghast. She said quickly, Nancy has done nothing wrong. She's an amateur detective, and we've been trying to trace cats that were stolen from a woman we know. Her name's Carter. The taller of the 2 men looked at Nancy. Amateur detective, eh? He scoffed. Well, if there's one thing in this world I have no use for, it's an amateur detective. Nancy was stung by the remark. Somehow she must prove to these men she was not faking. She saw a woman in booth 31 who was busy grooming some Maltese cats. She dashed over and touched her arm. Pardon me, but could you tell me where the man went to at the cats in booth 30? I can't tell you where he went, the woman answered, but I can tell you this. After you and the other young lady left here, he began to act strange. He mumbled to himself, then called out to passers-by. Want to buy a cat cheap?" The price was so ridiculous, he sold them all in a couple of minutes. Then he rushed out of here as if a cyclone were chasing him. Nancy was so appreciative of the woman's assistance she could have kissed her, but she merely said, "I suspect that the cats the man was selling had been stolen from a home where I'm staying. I called the police, and here are 2 detectives. They doubted my story, so I'm very grateful to you for helping me out." The woman turned to the detectives. "Everything I've just said is true. Besides, I can very easily believe the man is the thief. He acted very odd right from the beginning, shifty-eyed and sort of scared, and wouldn't let the judges look at his Persians. Even the cats didn't seem to like him. He was having a hard time with them." The taller detective turned to Nancy. "I'm sorry, I thought you were kidding us." Then he quickly defended himself. "The police get so many phony calls, I guess we're kind of rough on people sometimes." He then asked for a full description of the suspect. The woman in booth 31 gave a clear picture of the man. "Short and kind of stocky. He walked with quick steps. As I said, he was shifty-eyed and acted nervous. He had dark hair and eyes. I guess that's all I can tell you about him." The detective said she had been a great help, and they would try to locate the man. The detective said goodbye to everyone and left. After Nancy had thanked the woman again, she and Bess hurried back to their own booth. "I'm sorry I didn't get a look at that man's Persian cats," Bess said. "He probably took the list of the purchasers. There's no chance of tracing him or the cats." "I'm afraid not," Nancy agreed. "Let's just hope they found good homes." The girls were delighted that George had sold 2 cats, and within a few minutes Nancy sold 1. By now the crowd had dwindled, and it was approaching closing times. "Oh dear," said Bess. "Do you suppose we'll have to take Agatha back home? Miss Carter needs the money and will be disappointed that we didn't sell all the Persians. Should we lower the price?" "I don't want to do that," said Nancy. She took the Persian from its cage and fondled the fluffy animal. Maybe her gesture would appeal to some prospective buyer. Among the people who stopped at the booth was a little boy. His pockets were stuffed with boxes of popcorn and candy. In one hand he carried a curled-up paper whistle. He walked close to the cat and gave a great blow on the whistle. Not only did it make a loud noise, but the curled-up section flew out of the little animal and hit it in the face. "Oh, you naughty boy!" Nancy cried as the cat leaped from her arms. To her dismay, it scooted up a post and onto a crossbeam. She turned toward the cat and held up one hand. "Don't be frightened," she said soothingly. "I won't let him do it again. Please come down." The cat paid no attention, so Nancy climbed up on a chair and reached for him. But the cat scooted farther away and climbed high into the rafter of the auditorium. "Oh dear," said Bess. "What are we going to do now?" Nancy continued to cajole the Persian to climb down, but without success. Bess and George tried persuading the cat to come back, but they had no luck either. "I suppose there's only one thing left to do," said Nancy. "I'm glad I wore pants." She caught the beam above, hoisted herself onto it, and walked along it to the rafter. Then she began climbing toward the cat. "Oh, Nancy," wailed Bess. "That's too dangerous. The cat isn't worth it. Please come back." Nancy assured Bess that she would be all right, and continued to climb. Onlookers began to gather and offer all kinds of advice. Most of the men urged Nancy to go on, but to be careful. The woman begged her to come down. Bess turned her back on the scene. She was ashen. Her lips were moving, and George assumed she was praying for Nancy's safe return. The cat watched Nancy from a high beam. As the girl finally reached the beam on which the animal stood, she straddled it and started to inch her way along. "Come on, pussy," she coaxed. "No one's going to hurt you." The cat waited a moment. Then instead of coming toward Nancy, it went the other way. "Oh, you meanie!" Nancy exclaimed. The crowd below watched tensely. Finally, one of the men called to her. "Hang on! I'll toss a net up and you can catch the animal that way." The man dashed off. He came back in a couple of minutes with a fish net, which he threw upward. It did not reach the beam. Once more he gave the net a mighty heave. Still, it did not reach Nancy. "I guess it's no use," she called down. A very tall man among the onlookers offered to try his luck. He rolled the net into a ball and gave it a mighty heave. Nancy reached down to grab the net and caught it. But the weight of the net and her sudden shift in position caused Nancy to lose her balance. Uh-oh. That's the end of chapter 10. We'll have to find out what happened.